I'm Dan at vintagefellow.org, and today is new project day. Now, I recently picked up this rather attractive chromed steel frame. I had a good idea what this originally was, but I couldn't tell for certain until I had it in my hands. Now, what we have here is a steel frame made by Carrera. We can see here on the brake bridge and on the seat stays just up here. It's all nicely marked up, pantograph Carrera, and we have a race number hanger just here. Now, I had a feeling I knew what this was. Now, chromed frames by Carrera, the team themselves. Now, when we say Carrera, we are talking about the Italian bike manufacturer Carrera. Don't get that mixed up with the UK Halfords brand. Unfortunately, Carrera Italy did lose the court case against Carrera Halfords on using the name in the UK. So in the UK, we often associate Carrera with Halfords cheap bikes. This is not that. This is the real deal team bike from Carrera in Italy. Now, at this point, this is a 1989 frame, and we can tell this apart from certain details. It's the chrome. The whole frame is polished chrome, and in that year, and only in 1989, the Carrera team bikes were using a blue paint, a blue metallic paint over chrome, with loads of the chrome showing through. Chrome lugs, the actual decals were actually the chrome showing through the blue paint, that kind of thing in relief. And it's very clear as soon as we look inside there and down here in the bottom bracket area, there's loads, and we can see here as well, there's loads of the original blue showing through. Always the way with things like this that have been stripped. Now, reason why this has lost its paint: painting over chrome, always a challenge. It almost always comes off. We're certainly very familiar with Chromovolato, which, you know, kind of comes off by your thumbnail quite often, as obviously adhesion to chrome is a bit of a challenge, and that's why this one no longer has its blue paint and it's now just left in chrome. Frame material, as I would expect, there's rifling inside. This is Carrera SLX, and quite interestingly, 1989, Carrera Vagabond moved away from Carrera Battleland team frames to Carrera team frames that own in-house. But I noticed on the dropouts some nice neat little Battleland marks. So I wonder whether Battleland were still actually making these frames for Carrera, and then they were all just badged up as Carrera rather than Battlelands. My opinion, I may be wrong, never know. Now, at the moment, I do not know the racer. I don't know the rider who rode this frame. And now this is frame number 18. Frame and forks, both chrome, both just marked with 18. There are no serial numbers on here to work off, just the rider number. Now, usually tracking rider numbers isn't too hard. However, with Carrera in 1989, they had between 18 and 24 riders, and the number of riders changed and moved around throughout the entire year. So at the tail end, you're probably into the V's of the rider names. Wiener, Johan van der Velde, Zimmerman, these kind of guys. Now, I've had a look at the size here of the frame, and I've compared it with period photographs of the same riders. Most of the riders are either too small or too big for this bike. It's definitely an Zimmerman kind of size, but I don't know that for definite. Obviously, I would like this to be Zimmerman, but I don't know that for definite. Now, if any of you out there have the list, the rider list that corresponds to the frame numbers, do let me know in the comments or direct message me. It would be excellent to know. There is rider lists out there. These aren't just the start lists that you see on Pro Cycling Stats and things like that. The problem with that kind of thing is riders came and went during the course of that season in 1989 with Carrera. So it's not quite as simple as looking at an alphabetical order and going, number 18, it's that dude. Doesn't really work quite like that. But always more investigation to be done. Now, what's the plan? The plan is to recreate the original paintwork, but rather than using a metallic blue, I am going to use a Chromovolato blue. Chromovolato is such a beautiful paint job and a beautiful word as well. So what that is a clear lacquer over the chrome. And then it's sealed after that. And now it's not a very durable finish, but it is beautiful. So we're going to do a Chromovolato paint job on here, and then we are going to refit it with all of its Dura Ace that it would have had at the time. Dura Ace 7400, 7402 would have been on here. So that's the plan. First thing I have to do is get on the polishing wheel and really give this a good buff and clean. The good thing is the frame is nice and straight, so that's a great place to start, but it does need a good clean, a good polish. So that's the first job. So I'm using a nice, very soft wire brush on here, so as not to damage the chrome, but to give it a little luster, a little pickup, so I can see what I'm dealing with. And yeah, the chrome itself is coming up really quite well. I've got a couple of little areas of rust I've got to have a little deal with, but at the moment we are all looking good. Time to get back on the wheel. Okay, so we now have ourselves a nice cleaned chrome steel frame ready to paint. Now, I did take the time to print off the internet how this bike actually looked back in the day, and there's a lot of basically like all the chrome detailing and the lugs and everything are picked out, so we've got to mask those all off. And effectively the Carrera markings and things like that, the decals, are effectively stencils that we're going to put on, spray over and then remove fairly quickly after the painting process. Now with Chromovolato, there's no undercoating. We're going to go over here with a clear lacquer, with a coloured lacquer, take the decals off and then we'll lacquer it afterwards, but that's the kind of process we're going through. Always of note, if you are working on or you're thinking of doing a Chromovolato paint job, remember a lot of the time it's not always a completely chrome frame. If you've got chrome legs or parts of it, or the rear quarter of the rear frame is chromed, quite often they'll chrome the whole bike, but they won't polish the whole bike. They'll polish the parts that they're expecting to be exposed. This one, the whole bike has been polished, apart from the Cinelli bottom bracket area, which hasn't really, it's been brightened but not really polished. Also, the lugs on here are Cinelli lugs as well, which is a rather nice detail. So, next thing we're going to do, I am going to degrease this to within an inch of its life and then get those decals on before the process of putting on the clear lacquer. So it's been a bit of time since you saw this bike last, and as you can see, the frame now has some rather glorious blue Chromovolato paint on it. It took a long time, and I'll be honest with you, when I was discussing this project with a buddy of mine who does a lot of custom motorbike spraying, I said to him I was working on a chrome frame and I was going to use stencilled Chromovolato, and he kind of put his hand on my shoulder and shook his head and felt for me. And I can see why. What you see here is not the first attempt. I did it once. Getting the stencils off was horrendous, especially in the tight little corners. The paint, the Chromovolato just wanted to come off. In some areas it was stuck on really, really well. Some areas it just didn't want to come off with the stencils. And it was just hell. So I had to strip that off. This is paint job number 2. Because it was so hard, and I had to be super duper careful on getting the decals off without taking the Chromovolato in the corners and stuff like that with it. It's not perfect, but it's as good as this is going to get, for sure. If you'd be painting this with an etch primer, you'd have a much better chance of doing a really good job with stencils. But Chromovolato and stencils, I know why they only did this for 1 year, and I also know why it was never commercially available. It's just a super tough thing to do, so I don't advise it. Obviously we've got lovely detailing as well. We've got the chrome lugs as well on show. Probably a video in itself on how to get good looking chrome lugs on a paint job, but also we've picked out nice detailing on the Carrera markings and bits like that. Now I fitted a couple of small parts as ever. The headset pressed in, always press in those cups, no bashing with a hammer, that's not allowed. And interestingly, on the chrome forks, I'll bring you in here, we have cleaned these up, they've come up okay. Interestingly, we have rider number 18 on there, and then I was cleaning it up, I found around somewhere else about there a little Z, which was probably referring to the rider. Now we'd hope that would really narrow things down. It kind of helps. In 1989 on the Carrera team there were 2 riders with the initial Z. We've got Zanier and we've got Zimmerman. Now Zanier, he funnily enough went on to ride for Mercatoni Uno with Marco Pantani. He is tiny and his frames are much smaller than this. They're almost like a child size. So I can say with confidence it's not Zanier's frame. When you look at the period photos, this bike is the same size as ridden by Zimmerman. So I'm pretty sure, I'd go to 95, 98% definite this is Zimmerman's, or one of Zimmerman's 1989 Carrera team bikes, which is super cool. But we're not going to let that slow us down. We've got to get some parts on here now, so I'm going to go ahead and get these forks assembled and we can start working on the front end here. So that's the forks on there nicely. They just popped straight on, no issues. Going to go ahead now with the bottom bracket. I've already put the drive side cup in there nice and tight. And now I'm going to assemble the bottom bracket assembly. Fresh grease on there, bearings facing inwards, so that's the kind of the cage bit kind of facing outwards is how you do this. And if one end is sticking out slightly further than the other, that's your drive side. We're going to pop that in, pop in the little dust cap as well, get the other side on there and tightened up. Well, that's in there nice and smooth. As ever, use your correct tools when you're fitting bottom brackets. These things are not hard to get hold of on eBay, especially when you're working on a freshly painted frame, because, you know, something a bit naff, a pair of grips or something, if it lets go, then we all know that for some reason, nothing attracts a tool quicker than a freshly painted frame. But we're going to go ahead now. I'm going to just pop on the Dura Ace cranks now, because I do like fitting cranks, and then we'll get this front end assembled. Okay, so that's how I like a crank to rotate with fresh bearings on. It's really, really nice. Now, on this Dura Ace crank, I did actually go ahead and swap out the original outer chainring with a brand new Stronglight item. It's 5239, but the outer chainring was originally absolutely shot. So that had quite a lot of miles through it, so I've swapped it out for a brand new one, but it's a nice wideable package. Now I think brakes, let's get them on there. Okay, coming on nicely. Brakes are on. I did go for the dual pivot Dura Ace brakes rather than single. You get a lot more biting power, brake biting power with the dual, so I do prefer those where possible. And I've gone ahead and put a 130 stem on there for plenty of reach. It's an ITM example, really, really nice, like that one a lot. And some 40mm wide bars to go with it as well. I think it's probably time to start running derailleurs and lines. Now, when you're putting on a new chain, if you don't have the old one for reference, you can figure out the length by going biggest cog to biggest cog and then adding a couple of links and going from there. However, one issue I do have, the good old eBay seller that sold me the brand new Shimano chain didn't put any quick links in there. That's a bit cheeky. Now, All it means is when I cut it apart, take it apart with the splitter, I've just got to be careful to make sure that I leave the little rod in place, and then I can push it back in to put it back together and securely hold it. It's pretty old school, it's how we used to do it. I've done it on plenty of chains, but quick links, you know, kind of handy. Now, one thing of note, I like to set these up, these 8-speed Dura Ace. I like to use an 11 to 28 cog. You can get a 13 or 14 28, but Dura Ace cogs only go up to 26, and they're very hard to get. But a regular 8-speed Shimano rear cassette will fit and work fine, and it does index absolutely fine off of the 8-speed Dura Ace. And some sites online, you look on the old internet, do say that it's not compatible, but the modern 8-speed rear cassette is compatible in this. But I do like to use a 10-speed chain, not an 8-speed chain. Just seems to stop any potential rubbing issues, but that's how I like it. 11, 28 with a 10-speed chain on the 8-speed Dura Ace seems to be a bit of a sweet spot, in my opinion. Hey, shoot me down, feel free. But that's how I like to set these up. Now, I'm going to go ahead and try and sort this chain out. Okay, chains on there. It was a bit of a fight in the end, as it would be doing it the old school method. I did actually have to take an extra link out. It was too loose to start off with, so I doubled up on my effort. Now, one of the last things I'm going to do, I'm going to go through and just trim down the cables to the correct length. Regular viewers of the channel will know I'm not a fan of those little ferrule things, so what I'm going to do, nice sharp cutters, run them through, and then I'll put a little bit of super glue on the end of each cable to stop them fraying. It just means if I have to take them back out and put them back in, you get a few goes before they start to fray. That's how I like it. So now the bike is complete and it is looking awesome, but there is something that is bugging me, something I don't think is right. Sometimes these things happen, you know, when you're building a bike, you're putting on a lot of replacement parts and things, you know, especially chains, consumables. And on this one, I am not convinced that the chain is what it said on the eBay advert. It should be, I think it was a 10-speed Shimano chain. I'm pretty sure it's not. There's no Shimano markings on it whatsoever. It did come in a Shimano box, but it was resealed. There was no quick links, no nothing like that. I've got a feeling that this chain is of low quality and has been repackaged. A bit of a scam job. You do encounter this now and again. You know, hey, it's not a perfect world. But this chain, I'm pretty sure, I mean, when I was playing around with it, linking it up, it was not good. So I'm not taking any risks. I'm going to take this off. I'm afraid that one's for the recycling bin. We've got a nice 9-speed KMC Shimano chain here ready to go on. I do like KMC chains. I've never had a single problem with them. That is clearly brand new. I've just opened it up and it has the quick links with it as well. So everything about it is good. So I'm just going to take this off, use it as the template for the length, swap it out and then see what happens. Well, now that's like chalk and cheese. That chain is a load better. It went on there fine. It's really smooth. It looks better. It's indexing nicely. I don't know what went on with that other chain, but sometimes, hey, if something's not right, don't mess around, just swap it out. Obviously, with the quick link, we have some DIY first aid just here. As it popped into place, I then drove my finger into the chainring. There we go. These things happen. But now I think we're pretty much there. Now there we have it. Boy, does it look fantastic. I'm really pleased with how this one has come out. Obviously, you know, you take a bike, you do your research. What we have here, a 1989 Carrera team bike, almost certainly Urs Zimmermann's. Yeah, building it back up with period components as it would have had pretty much at the day. Yeah, it's just a thing of beauty. I love the silver finish, the ITM stem and the Selle Italia flight titanium saddle just finish it off really nicely. The wheels are gorgeous. Everything on there, just, you know, drippingly cool. I really like it. But if you are thinking of working in Chromovolato yourself, good luck. Be prepared. It is really challenging to work with. And when you're building a bike back up after you've finished painting it, that's pretty scary as well, because Chromovolato is not a strong finish. So you've got to be super careful that you're not catching it with any tools or anything like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. We will be out there riding this soon with a when we take this head to head with the slightly earlier 1987-1988 Carrera team bike we have of Guido Bontempi's. That's the traditional blue, red, whitey cream scheme that we are used to seeing from Stephen Roche. So we're going to go head to head with those two bikes, this bike and the year earlier, just to see. I think there's going to be quite a lot of difference, a lot of technical difference between the two. So we will get out there soon and get that video done. Anyway, do like and subscribe if you want to see more cool video bike action. Thanks a lot.